Today on Design, Build, and Fix, we're going to show you the finishing touches for this beautiful hardwood flooring installation. If you didn't watch the first two videos in this 3-video series, first one was on the preparation, second one was on the main installation, click the links below in the description. That'll take you back to the first two videos and then come back and watch this one. In this video, when it's all said and done, we're going to give you a tour of what this project looked like at completion. So let's jump right into that video. All right, so at this point in time, we're getting into the last few rows over here and in front of the tile, and then we have this little section over here. So this is where it's going to change up a little bit. All of this whole field that we did was easily done with the flooring nailer. The problem is now that we're getting down close to the wall, as you can see, that's probably the last one I can use because now the nailer doesn't fit because of the wall. So at this point in time, it's now time to brad nail or finish nail through the tongue until you can't do that with your finish nailer or brad nailer because of the wall. We're going to continue to do that until you get to the last one, and then we're going to have to face nail it through the boards. Now, this board is not in yet, and this board's not in yet because my brad nailer will not shoot through the Brazilian cherry hardwood floor. It's a extremely hard hardwood, and my brad nailer can't go through it. So what I'm going to have to do, like I did on the first couple rows, is pre-drill, pound nails through, countersink them, and then continue that process till I get to the last row out here, and then I'm going to have to face nail down through the top of the wood, which is not a problem because we'll have molding that's going to sit over top of it. So that's what we're going to have to do in this situation until we stop right about here, because that's where the stairs are going to go put in. I'm going to leave these last couple off until I get the stairs in. And then over here, it's still going to work naturally with the stapler, the nailer, because there's plenty of swing room. And then we have that same process that we're going to do over here against the wall, just like we have over there. All right, so now it's time to notch around our tile floor, and all I'm going to do is take a piece of our next piece, butt it up right there, come over here, and I'm going to put a mark on the tongue where I want that to be. Going to give me about 1/4 of an inch of gap there. Not that that's going to be much of a big deal because it's not going to expand or contract much this way. But now what we have to do is to get this and how big this has to be. Now I measured this. It's only out about 1/8 of an inch from here to here down to there. So it's relatively pretty parallel for the distance that we went. And so now what we have to do is measure our size. And our size right now here is 2 3/4. At the end of the board, if I put that where it's supposed to be, right here, that's the end of our board, 2 7/8. So it's about 1/8 of an inch from there to there, and it stays the same pretty much the rest of the way that way. So if I were to give myself, I'm going to say about 5/16 of an inch. I'm going to take 5/16 off of this, 3/8 or so, and I'm going to cut this at about 2.5 inches, and that's going to give me about a 3/8 inch gap there. And that's going to work out pretty well. It's not going to get any bigger down there. It's going to be a little bit tighter there, but not too bad. And I think that 3/8 is going to be more than enough for our expansion and contraction. Mostly because I did this in the summertime. It's been pretty humid the last few days. And I do have to say that this wood has been in the house for about 6 weeks ahead of time. So I think it's it's probably dried out and acclimated, and it has expanded a little bit because of the humidity. And so if anything, it's pretty much going to shrink as opposed to swell. Because if we get into the winter time, it's actually going to contract more than swelling. So I'm going to cut it there on the table saw, and we'll get this piece installed. All right, so our first cut that we're going to do is we're actually going to cut to this mark, and we're going to go down to here because I've measured over the 2.5 inches that we wanted to come up. And I'm just going to basically put it on the saw. I want to be on that side of the line. And what I'm going to do is, so I get a square cut, make sure it's tight against the fence, bring it down until my teeth come to that point, then I'll square it up with a jigsaw. All right, so I made it down to the cut. Now we'll move on to the table saw. Now when I make this cut, I'm going to use the table saw to run into here until it comes to this point here, and then we'll square it up with the jigsaw. See, the cut came out extremely well. It's nice and straight. The first part just gets nailed in with the air nailer, and the rest gets nailed through the face. All right, to get this joint as tight as possible, we're going to take our pry bar and pry it the best we can against this, trying not to crack our tile. Pre-drill. We're going to come back later and fill that with a filler. All right, so the drill bit broke in this one. We're going to drill another hole and pound that down. Now, one of the things you want to make sure that you do is make sure you stay about 3/4 of an inch or so away from the edge, just in case you actually drive that nail too deep and the head of it starts to split the wood. Stay about 3/4 of the way from the edge, and then at the end stay an inch or two away from the end so you don't split it this way or that way. That is how you're going to put the last board on, whether it's here at the tile or it's going to be over there at the wall. All right, so here's one detail you want to pay attention to. Is this is our small little section, and normally we start at this wall and work our way this way based on where our tongue is located, but we want to make sure that this edge right here is perfectly straight with our reveal to be exactly the same. And so what I'm going to do is start at this edge and work my way that way, making sure that these line up perfectly, because we're going to fill this with a grout caulk like we did for tile floor installation. But in order to get this in, the next piece, let's say for example, is the whole length. Let's just assume this is a whole length piece. It's not actually the piece, but what you're going to have to do to get that in is to put it in like this, and then tip it down, tighten it, and then pry it against the wall this way to get this seam tight. That's going to be the easiest way to make that seam perfectly straight. All right, so now it's time to put the hardwood flooring on the step. Now this is just set in place for layout. And what I had to do to get this layout set, the first thing I had to do is decide how much overhang I'm going to have. And I decided I was going to have 1 1/8 inches from here. And in front of this, we still have to put a 3/16-ish Luan board that's painted white. It's going to be that one over there. I just got to paint it. So it's going to give us about a 7/8 of an inch overhang here, and I set that up on this side also. So I just moved it left and right, front and back to make sure it goes where it's supposed to go. Okay, so now that I have my overhang correct, what I had to do is take this board, and that last board. What I did is I go ahead and cut the tongue off, because you can't show the tongue because that's going to look awful. But more importantly, by cutting the tongue off, it gives me an edge that I can router nice and round, And then what I did is I took this board and cut it to 45. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a biscuit joint here, and I'll show you how to do that here shortly, but I'm going to put a biscuit joint here, and then down there, all I did is I ran it long. I took that board, flipped it up, marked underneath the side of the board, and I'm going to cut that to length. Okay, so now that I have my boards all in the right spot, what I'm going to do is take this board and get that first row in just by pre-nailing through the holes here that I have to drill, and then I'm going to nail it through hand nail, or basically hand drill and pound in nails like our first row, like we started, all the way down. Once I have that in place, my end goal is to put this one on, and then I can actually use my flooring nailer for the rest of the boards until I get out to here. Now at this point, when we do the outside part, I'm basically going to face nail this board in all the way down, and then fill it with a wood filler of the light color. Now I will probably also put a little glue in that groove and tongue, just because I want these two boards to be tight together, because we have a slight overhang here and I don't want those things to move. It will shrink together, but that's the plan, and we're going to see how it comes out. All right, so in order to make our 45 degree as flush as possible and help hold it together, we're going to use this machine, which is a biscuit joiner. And basically what it does is it comes out and it puts a curved cut, as you can see by the blade, into your piece of wood. And there's different size biscuits out there. This is a 20, there's a 10 and a 0. They just get smaller and smaller. But I wanted to use the biggest one because it's going to allow us to have the most amount of biscuit that goes between this 45 in here. So after you've cut it, it puts a slot in here, and I've already pre-done this on 2 of them. And all you have to do is you put a little bit of glue in here, put your biscuit in, and then take your other piece, put a little bit of glue in there, and it causes those to go together and allows it to slide a little bit so you can line it up perfectly. And it makes the top perfectly flat, and that helps hold things together. All right, so I'm going to do that on this piece and then glue this together. Now what you're going to want to do is to make sure you put the 2 pieces of wood that you want to actually put together, and you're going to want to draw a line right where you want to cut. You can't see it, I can see it here, but there's a line there, and you're going to line that up There's a line in there, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll see it. It lines up with this line right here, and that's going to give it a exact cut. Now you may want to hold it off the table. Rearrange this a little bit. You want to hold it off the table because you don't want it to rest on the table. You want it to be off the table. Put it on here like this and slowly go in and wait till it stops. Now normally what you'd want to do is to clamp those together. I'm going to put glue in here and glue on that side, put this together, and then I'm just going to put a nail through here on each corner to help hold it in place as I put it into the step. Alright, so the only thing left to do for here is to round the edge. I'm going to hit it with some 80 grit, 120, then 220, and then go back and fill the nail holes with color to match wood filler. Now that we have all the hardwood floor installed, it's now time to tackle the baseboard installation. And the baseboard installation is going to be the same whether you use a large baseboard like that one or a smaller baseboard like this one, and I will provide a link down in the description to show you how to do that. Alright, so installing these baseboard heat registers, they're relatively easy to do. All you have to do is push from the inside. They swing open, the front grill comes off, and what they've done in here is they've given you two spots to mount it. One of them is going to be this hole here, and then there's another one here. I would not recommend putting it through the floor because what's going to happen is going to prevent that floor from expanding and contracting. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you put it through this hole here and get it installed into the baseboard. Now I ran the baseboard first because I like the look of how this looks. If this baseboard was a little bit taller where this ended up with that, it looked a little bit nicer, but I'm still okay with that. And all I'm going to do is just put 2 screws in there and that'll hold it nice and tight. Alright, so once that's screwed in, put these on the bottom. And it just holds tight like that. Open and close if you like. Alright, so our last step in our hardwood flooring installation is to deal with areas where we have our hardwood butting up against to a hard surface like tile. And what we want to do is to take our grout colored caulk, which is flexible, which will allow for expansion and contraction, and we have to get it into our area that we've left for the expansion and contraction. And when we're done with this process, we kind of want it to mimic what our grout looks like here compared over here. So it's not going to be completely flat, it's going to be kind of concaved in. And you want that to be as smooth as possible. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's not a fast and it's not an easy process. At least the ways that I have been doing it, this tends to work out the best for me. So let me show you how we do this. So what I normally do is I lay out a paper towel I have a cup full of water, and you're going to want to make sure that your tip of your grout is a little bit smaller than the size of the area that you kind of want to put it into. Unfortunately for this, I've used this one in a different spot in the house when I did this before, and this is a leftover one and I didn't want to throw it away. So my tip is considerably bigger, so I'm going to have to deal with that issue. Basically what we want to do is to run it through here, and we're going to just put in just enough that's going to make it relatively flat and make sure that it goes down into that whole cavity. And I normally do one block or brick at a time. It's not a fast process. I can see that I'm filling mostly all the way to the bottom. You don't want to overfill it, because that's just more that you have to wipe off, and this being a silicone-based product, not the easiest task. So you want to get it just about right. Okay, so now that we have it all the way there, I'm going to take another paper towel, and I'm just going to wipe off the edge that's coming onto the tile. I'm going to break that edge. Once I'm done with that corner, I fold it over and in, so I have a new piece. Same process. Doesn't have to be perfect at this point. You will go through quite a few paper towels. All right, so now that side's done. With the same thing on the wood side. So now I've come through with the towel doing that, and then I come through with my finger, and what it's going to do is it's going to kind of round it a little bit better. Then whatever extra I have on there, I just wipe it off on the paper towel. Same thing on this side. So now that I got the majority of that cleaned up, I'm going to do is just dip my finger in the water and lightly pull it across. Wipe off what you don't need. Right now you're kind of just concaving it and pushing it down into the crack. Some of it's going to come off on your finger. The water helps it flow. And if you get to a spot where you're kind of having a little bit more of a divot, just go back, redo that section. You don't want to push down too hard. Once you get it smoothed out to the point where you like it, just come back and do your final cleanup, making sure you don't go down into the valley. And if there's any water left over, don't worry about it, it'll just dry up. Okay, block by block, and it'll be done. It's going to take a little bit of time. All right, hardwood flooring completely installed. Let's take a look at it. So as along over here on this wall, you can see we have a hole in the floor and another hole in the floor. That's cold air returns that are going to be part of the toe kick process for the built-in cabinets, and that's why the baseboard molding on both sides only goes so far in. Those are just going to come out at some point in time when we do the built-in cabinets for here. As you can see over here, we have one step, hardwood floor that goes on top of it. And then coming around over here, the baseboard goes all the way along with the moved floor registers. All the way around, baseboard with quarter round molding. And then of course we have the tile that we did in a different video, and the grout colored caulk has been installed, which allow the floors to expand and contract. About 450 square feet of hardwood flooring. Saved about $2,000 on the install due to the fact that I did it myself. You can do it too. Alright, so let's put a little closure to this hardwood flooring installation video and talk a little bit about the high points that we talked about in the video. But before we do that, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, so first and foremost, make sure that you do not buy hardwood flooring from a liquidation company, at least in my mind. I tried that once and it didn't go very well. It's liquidation for a reason. The reason is there's usually some sort of a milling issue with the width of the boards, so it gives you a lot of spaces or cracks between the boards and it just doesn't look good. So I've steered away from those companies and I've always bought really good hardwood flooring from good reputable companies. If you do buy it from a liquidation company, you're probably going to have to buy 25 or 30% more material just to come up with the same size width boards. All right, next. Make sure that you leave expansion and contraction joints on the edges, which will allow that board to expand and contract. If you don't, it's going to buckle and it's going to squeak and it's going to lift up. It's not going to look very good. Next, make sure you stay away from patterns when putting your hardwood flooring down. Make sure that that board is completely tight against the other boards before you nail them in. And last but not least, make sure you caulk between tile with colored caulk in your hardwood floor, which will allow for the expansion and contraction. Last but not least, take your time. Remember, slow and steady finishes the race. Now that I've showed you how to install hardwood flooring, it's your turn. You'll be surprised at what you can do.